Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the first Field Notes podcast of 2021. I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger. This month, we'll be talking with Carlos D. Oliveira and Michael Gray, co-founders of AISC member company and amazing steel castings company, Cast Connex. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to chat. So let's start from the beginning. How did you two meet?
Well, we met when we were both co-op work term students at a structural engineering firm in Toronto. I was on a 4-month work term, and Michael was partway through his year-long work term there. We were sitting beside each other and tasked with similar projects, and we got to know each other working side by side there.
Yeah, two things stand out. The first day I met Carlos, he told me he was going to start his own firm, and then the second thing is he tried to sell me a CD from his rock band that he was like peddling. Like he's like, "Hi, I'm Carlos. Will you buy a CD?" Yeah, yeah.
But Michael did buy it.
Yeah,
I'll point out. Although that's a bit of a point of contention now because he holds that over me as a threat that he's gonna play it for all of our employees.
Oh goodness! It's probably good to keep that one in your pocket just in case.
Exactly. Yeah. That's like the nuclear option. I don't want to go there really, unless I have to. Yeah. But the funny thing is, like by the end of the work term, he was like, "We should start our own business," and I was like, "This guy is nuts. No way." Yeah.
Well, that's what I was wondering when you said that, when you mentioned that about starting his own business. There's two reactions: either I'm on board or you're crazy. So yeah. eventually you got on board, obviously. So yeah, maybe from there, what is sort of the rest of the origin story for Cast Connex? And then fit this in if you want. But I do recall an earlier conversation involving a van trip, although that was maybe further along in the process.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all kind of ties together, to be honest. So during my co-op work term, sitting beside Michael, I was applying to grad schools, and I was considering going to the U.S. Both Michael and I were born and raised in Toronto, and Michael at the time was working or studying at the University of Toronto, and he suggested that I look into going to the University of Toronto to do my master's degree. He was talking about the excellent professors there in civil engineering and the incredible structures laboratory test facilities that they have there. At the time, I was studying at the University of Waterloo. And, he really pitched the university to me, and I applied, of course, got in. And so I ended up working with professors Jeff Packer and Konstantin Christopoulos. Jeffrey Packer, of course, being well known for tubular connections and HSS, and Professor Christopoulos in seismic design of structures. And my master's thesis topic was to study seismic resistant brace frame connections and to look at how we might be able to leverage casting manufacturing to simplify those types of connections. So that was the topic of my master's thesis, and was really part of the nexus of our business. Michael played a role, of course, in convincing me to go to U of T, which was critical. But then a year into my master's thesis, my two supervisors, who are outstanding mentors as well, were encouraging me to switch streams from a master's thesis to a PhD, and I turned them down. I had other aspirations, and so they came to me one day and they said, "Well, since you've turned us down, you're going to be finishing your master's thesis in about a year. We need to get another student to continue your research and work, and we've got this great student in mind. He studied at U of T as well in his undergrad, and he's really bright and intelligent. You might know him. His name is Michael Gray." And it was really funny because Michael and I, of course, were best friends, and I thought it was really, really fitting that Michael was going to actually be taking my research to the next level, so to speak, when he started his master's thesis, which eventually became a doctorate.
Okay.
And so that was that research eventually led into the creation of our business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The van story, the van story is more about our first trip to NASCC, like the North
Right.
American Steel Construction
Now
Conference.
it's coming back. Yes.
Yeah. So we had like founded Cast Connex earlier, maybe a year earlier. And this was kind of, I mean, you know, when you're starting a company like this, there's some effort into just like getting products developed, doing some testing. And this was our big launch. And, it might seem glamorous, especially if you're not familiar with Cast Connex from back then and you think of what you see today. But it was like the two of us in a rented van driving from Toronto to Nashville, like prototype castings in the back, rolling around and like a few pop-ups. We didn't know what we were doing, and it, like the crazy like part of the story is like halfway down there, we realized like we didn't even paint the castings. And so we pulled over at a hardware store and we're like, bought a wire brush and we're like trying to clean like the samples. Like, yeah, it was pretty brutal, but you got to start somewhere, I suppose.
Yeah, bootstrapping for certain. Attendees to NASCC, which is easily our favorite conference and trade show every year. Attendees at NASCC might not appreciate just how much effort and work goes into having a booth and getting your materials there and setting them all up. And when you're a small company like we were at the time, one employee and a kind of a part-time employee in Michael. As he was finishing his PhD, and we had to get our materials down there and set it all up ourselves and try to look somewhat professional. It was a fun time in the start of our business, that's for sure.
Definitely. The only thing that could have made that story even better was, and the van broke down or something like that.
Well, I don't know. Scrubbing rusty castings in the parking lot of a Walmart is pretty epic.
Everything
that's an acceptable substitute, sure.
Everything else probably broke down. Like those first few years of trade shows, I think I went to a hardware store in every city. Like I've been to so many hardware stores like following NASCC because you need to fix whatever,
Sure. Well, so that's great. I remember that story. That is a fantastic story. And so that makes me think of the next question. So you were talking about having a bunch of prototypes. Can you talk about maybe the first connection that you both came up with? The first one you developed for Cast Connex?
Sure. Our company's first product was our high strength connector, which are steel castings for the use at the end of bracing in special and ordinary concentrically braced frames. And that we actually developed that as part of my master's thesis work. So it ended up becoming our first product. And the first use of that product actually came about because we were clever enough to engage a very important steel fabricator to build our lab test specimens when we were doing full-scale testing at the University of Montreal at École Polytechnique with Robert Tremblay. We had Can-Am fabricate our test specimens because we thought if we could get our high-strength connectors in the hands of a big steel fabricator, they will appreciate how they simplify fabrication and how they go together easily, and it might come to something in the future. And sure enough, they were actually the ones to use our high strength connectors in the first building. In fact, they suggested and pulled our connectors into that project. They were building a 4-story office building in an empty lot that was beside their fabrication shop. And they leveraged our high strength connectors, and that turned out to be our company's first commercial sale.
Thanks in particular to one gentleman there, Pierre Gignac. He was a great engineer and very influential on our early years of starting our business. Very supportive.
Well, that's excellent, and that's a great. I just love the fluidity of that. So this is something you developed during graduate school that eventually became the first product in your company, and then when you went to fabrication, they actually were the ones who were able to use it first. So and that's a great first use, because from there you can say, Wow. Hey, look, this major company is using our castings. And then so I mean, because one of my questions was one of the first project. What was one of the first project? But that was it. So I got to ask, what was the second one?
Oh, that's a good
That's a good question.
The second one was our second product, which was kind of like launched in parallel with the high strength connector, which is the universal pin connector. I think it was a U.S. Air Force Base control center in Jersey.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep.
But I mean, another real early project for at least our getting involved with, I mean, it takes time to get things constructed and finished, was the Queen Richmond Center as well. And I mean, the team there was tremendously supportive in getting our start. I mean, that's a huge project for us. If it wasn't for Stevenson Engineering and Anco Architects and Walters, the fabricator, we wouldn't have gotten a shot at that. And frankly, they were crazy to even like let us do something like that. But we're still riding that project, right? Like we're still, promoting it because it was so big for us.
I mean, how could you?
Well,
not?
It's an insane structural feat, really. Each one of our castings is carrying 20 million pounds of force in supporting something like 12 stories of reinforced concrete office tower up in the air. Of course, you could only do that on steel, and it's architecture exposed structural steel, no less. But it's just such a tremendous project and such a great way to leverage casting manufacturing. Yeah, we often tell the story about that project.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and as you said, not only is it a huge project, but the castings themselves are literally, I mean, they're enormous. And that's one of those buildings that I'd say anybody who should go to Toronto. I mean, people go to various cities around the world and they look at the famous structures, but like that's one that, whether or not it's like a culturally significant project or something like the Empire State Building or the CN Tower or the Statue of Liberty, I'm like, that's one that you just need to, everybody should go see that atrium.
Yeah. You walk into that atrium, it's 70 feet up to the soffit of the underside of the building that's up in the air. And these sculptures, these structural steel sculptures are supporting the building. And you totally forget that it's a building up in the air above you. You're in this massive airy space, and these steel structures, they look more like sculptures, like art. You totally lose track of the fact that they're supporting the entire building over your head. It's really incredible.
Well, so speaking of inspirational buildings, let's go a step back even further before college and when you two met. What got you both? Let me ask it this way: were you both always interested in buildings and construction? And then on the sub question to that is, what are some of the first buildings that did inspire you both individually?
I think like most structural engineers, if you ask most structural engineers this question, they'll say, well, I used to play with Lego growing up or Tinker Toys, and at least it's the same for me. I think I was always into math and sciences and really, really driven to create and build and invent and design things. With respect to architecture, influential architecture, when I was a child, I have very fond memories of going to the Ontario Place, which features the Cinesphere, which is a spherical structure, theater structure. And I always remember looking at the structure of that building, which is actually on its outside, it's exoskeletal, and being fascinated and thinking about how that was put together and constructed. And, lo and behold, 20 years later, we are designing and engineering and supplying gigantic cast steel nodes for building the world's largest spherical structure that is under construction right now in Las Vegas. So it's kind of full circle on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, I guess like the first building I remember actually like, making me feel some kind of inspiration it's a building called Brookfield Place in Toronto, and it's an atrium designed by Santiago Calatrava. Some really beautiful, complex AESS arches support this kind of roof. And if you've been to Toronto, and you're an engineer or architect, you probably drop by that site. It's like it's a well-known space in the city,
Sure,
but very interesting. Yeah.
Speaking of Toronto, it sounds like you're both from there. What are some of your favorite things about the city?
I think I'd have to say it's the diversity. Toronto's really known as a diverse city. There are all kinds of cultures from all around the world living together in pretty good harmony. Lots of great restaurants, places to go, and as a business operator, it's great because it's enabled us to have a very diverse team and with lots of ideas and different backgrounds, which I think helps keep our company really healthy. So we love it. Couldn't imagine calling anywhere else home.
The cold in the winter sometimes makes me wonder, but
there is that. And then when it comes to producing the castings, it's different forges, different producers, depending on the project.
Yeah. So we subcontract the manufacture of the components that we produce, but we oversee their manufacture and production. So we put people into the facilities to check on quality control and assurance, and we form good partnerships with all of the manufacturers that we leverage. We've worked with many different foundries of all different sizes. As you can appreciate, the foundry that produces a small casting that you could pick up with your hands, say something that weighs like 20 pounds, efficiently is not going to be the same foundry that would be able to produce a 35,000 pound cast node for the Queen Richmond Center. So, we have to work with a lot of different vendors, both foundries, forge shops, machine shops, fabrication facilities. So sometimes we supply architecture exposed structural steel fitted with castings, and so we also hire fabricators as well. And so we benefit from all of these great partnerships that we've formed with lots of different manufacturers across the United States and Canada.
Excellent. Okay, I got another question about Toronto. Is it Torontonians? Is that correct? Is that the way to say it?
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay, as lifelong Torontonians, I'm going to make an assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're both Maple Leafs fans?
Clearly.
Well, indeed, yes.
Okay, well, here's my question, and I'm not gonna talk about why the drought and championships and that sort of thing, but I've never gotten a good answer to this question. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Why isn't it the Toronto Maple Leaves?
I don't know.
Okay, that equals the best answer I've ever gotten. So
yeah.
Well, individually, each is a leaf. I couldn't answer. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So, and I also have to ask Carlos, what was your band called?
Sound of Mind.
Sound of Mind. Clever. I like it. Did you sing or did you play an instrument?
I both sang and played lead guitar.
Okay, fantastic. Well, yeah. Hopefully someday the world will be able to hear the joyful or whatever angry. I don't know what type of sound. I don't know. We'll let Michael decide that.
Yeah, I should probably pull those files off of that CD because pretty soon I won't be able to read the thing, right?
Right.
There's no CD drives anywhere. Yeah.
Anything they need to be preserved for posterity.
Yeah.